Having a mower with all or most of the cool features might be nice, that is until it breaks down on you. This mower has a lot of the features that you would want and it's worked great for the last decade. But now it has a problem and it could mean the end for it. And after seeing what the problem is, it might make you want a simple push mower again. That's because there's no way this could ever happen to it. In today's video, we're going to be taking a second look at this Honda lawnmower. And the problem is that I was told the pull rope is extremely tough to pull. So I had my suspicions as to what the problem was, but after looking at the mower, I might have to reconsider it. Yes, it looks to be in great condition, but once you get a closer look at it, things look a bit off. Of course, the outward appearance of a machine won't tell you what's going on inside it, but it's not bad at gauging what kind of care it might have had in its lifetime. And from some key items, all I can say is that it's been through a lot, but it's taken it quite well. So what exactly have we figured out about this mower then? That's pretty simple. This mower has a lot of run time on it. The other thing that I noticed is that the owner has made some very questionable modifications to the mower, but I'm sure they meant well. And we'll have to see how this shortened governor spring is going to affect the engine speed. But we won't know until we find out what's wrong with the pull rope. So what's the most likely reason for the rope to be tough to pull? Well, for most regular lawnmowers, it's most likely going to be an engine problem. It might be internal or external, where something might be rubbing against the flywheel or the blade. But of course, the recoil might also be the cause, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. But one of the quickest and most simple items to check is of course the engine oil. So this is about as basic as needing gasoline for the engine to run, however it seems like most people forget to do this. And without enough oil in the engine, it will begin to wear out very quickly. But if this does happen, most times it'll typically make the rope easier to pull, not harder. So even though the oil level is low on this engine, I don't think that's the cause for it. It feels like the engine is jammed, but it slowly does turn over, so we know it's not stuck. The other possible reason would be if the engine was flooded with either oil, water, or even gasoline. But as you can see, the spark plug is not wet with anything and is only covered in a dusting of carbon. The strange part is that even with the spark plug out of the engine, the rope is still tough to pull over, letting us know that this is not going to be easy to figure out. For those that didn't realize it, this is no ordinary lawnmower, and the reason why is because of this. So it turns out this mower is equipped with a blade clutch, meaning the engine can start and run without the blade spinning. But if the system fails, it not only stops working, but it could also interfere with how the engine works. This is basically the last item to check before we start considering opening the engine for an inspection. And while we have the mower on its side, this would be a great time to drain the oil. Now this oil is very dark, so it looks like it's overdue for an oil change. So with the blade clutch system, we should be able to spin the blade independently from the engine unless we activate it. That means if we rotate the blade, the bolt in the middle should stay still. But as you can see, the bolt in the middle is trying to turn with it, which is not what it's supposed to do, at least not yet. What that tells us is that the ball bearing inside the assembly might have failed. And considering how much wear there is on the back part of the blade, it's very possible the bearing will be in really rough shape too. In fact, if I had to make a guess, I'd say these blades might be the original ones. And it would make sense that the bearings would also be the same as well. This would also be a great time to not only replace the bearings, but also the blades as well. So with the blades gone, we should be able to spin the assembly. But as you can tell, it's fighting back because it's trying to turn the engine too. Now most likely, the bearing in this part is also bad, however, it's probably a good idea to remove the entire assembly to inspect both of them. Just be careful when taking it apart, it's not complicated, but it's not straightforward either. As you can see, if this bearing here were to fail, it would directly fight against the engine. Whereas if the other one would lock up, it would connect the blade directly to the engine. There is also a chance that the bearing might be stuck to the shaft. And if it is, you're going to have a real struggle trying to take it off. Now there's more than one way to take this off, but I find this way to be the easiest. Simply pull the assembly towards you and then disconnect the spring and the cable from it. But if you have hand or joint problems, this may not work for you. And once it is free, it's very obvious that the bearing has failed and is not wanting to turn at all. But here's the real test. Are we going to be able to pull the rope and not have it fight back? And the answer is yes. As you can see, the crankshaft is spinning with normal effort with the rope. The only thing that's fighting is the compression stroke, so to get a better idea, we'll just take the spark plug out and try the same test again. So what I'm checking for is whether or not the bearing was the only problem or if there might be something else from the engine. But with the spark plug gone, the engine spins over with very little effort. Now the noise it's making is a different story. But that's a video for a different day about poor maintenance and neglect. So we know the other bearing is bad, but what about the first bearing we saw? This is the one that allows the blade to spin independently from the shaft. But after taking off the rubber seal, it's pretty obvious as to why it failed. So it appears all the grease has dried up, which is quite amazing. This typically doesn't happen unless the bearing gets really hot enough to burn up the grease. Now just for fun, I'll spray a thin lubricant in the bearing and see if that's enough to free it. And unfortunately, that didn't help out, so there's really nothing left but to replace it. Now if for some reason you can't or choose not to replace the bearing, you'll have to clean out all the old grease before adding the new grease. And that's because if you just break it free and apply new grease to it, the chances that it will fail again will be extremely high, besides it not lasting long either. Now oddly enough, after hitting it several times to remove it, it seems to have loosened it. Now to clean the grease, you could try brake cleaner, old gasoline, or maybe even using heat. So would I ever try to attempt this method? And the answer is, it depends. Now if it was my own personal lawnmower, then I might consider doing it. However, this one is not mine, so I'm replacing it. Now both bearings are not the same size and are two different part numbers. You might also want to compare the new ones to the old ones before installing them. Using a hydraulic press would be one way to install them, but it's not needed. These are interference fit, but you don't need to take them to the machine shop, you can install them yourself. After the bearings are installed, make sure that they still spin before moving on. That's because it'll be easier to fix them now versus later on when you realize it. Next, we'll start the process of putting everything back on, and then we'll test it to see if it works like it should. That's the biggest problem I have with the blade clutch system. Now these are great systems, and I know that because I used to use one decades ago. But when they fail, it's just another item you have to fix, so most consumers never choose to get that feature. Now personally, I choose a mower with a decent engine and self-propel, and that's it. I don't even care if it has a grass bag, electric start, or anything complex, only because I know I'll have to fix it later on. And once the blades are back on, we'll then rotate the engine and see if it spins independently from the blades, which it does. We'll then activate the blades, and that should lock the blades to the crankshaft, which means they'll spin together, which they do. And the last test would be to put it back on the ground and watch how easy it is to pull on the rope. And just like that, everything's working like it should be. So how did this happen? Is this a maintenance issue or something else entirely? So part of the problem with this mower is that it's had a really long, tough life, and there are worn out parts all over it. Some of the items just need a bit of care, while others need a bit more attention, but unfortunately none of these items were addressed, and failure is just the end result. So was there a way to avoid the bearing failure on the clutch system? Not really. However, a yearly inspection of its operation would have spotted it before it failed, and something could have been done before it did. And even though I know how to repair it, I'd rather be using my mower than fixing it. So my question is, do you want this sort of complexity on your lawnmower, or is something more simple a better option for you? And I don't think I have to tell you what my answer is going to be. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.